Be sure to listen to the Huckabee Report 3 times daily on nearly 500 radio stations across America. And to find the station near you, listen to past broadcasts, or to learn about Huck's heroes and much more. Go to MikeHuckabee.com, click on the Huckabee Report. Well, he once was a young radical communist and atheist. Then he became a Christian. He's now head of a Christian college in the heart of Manhattan, in fact, at the Empire State Building. Please welcome the president of King's College, Marvin Olasky. Marvin, it's so good to have you here. Welcome. You have had quite a pilgrimage. I mean, you were a radical in the 60s and early 70s and protesting the war. I think we've got a picture of what you looked like then so people can see a little different than today. Gosh, don't you wish you could still grow hair like that now? I do. I miss it so much. But you ended up going from radical communist to Christian. What happened?
Oh, God's grace. I was a communist in 1972, 1973. I started studying Russian to be able to speak with my Soviet big brothers. And
I mean, you were really the whole deal here,
right? I was the whole deal. Yeah. I actually had a card-carrying communist, carried it around.
Wow.
And one night in my room, I was a graduate student at the University of Michigan, I'd been studying Russian, wanted to just read something in Russian just for reading practice. And I had in my room a book I hadn't looked at, had been given it a couple of years before, held onto it as a souvenir, a copy of the New Testament in Russian. And reading very slowly, and I can see now the Holy Spirit working on me. By the time I got to chapter 5 of Matthew, I thought, this is something really spectacular. It's not from man, it's from God. There must be a God.
Wow.
So again, it wasn't my intention. I was just doing it to learn Russian. And then later that year, I was assigned as a graduate student to teach a course in early American literature. Well, what's early American literature? A lot of Puritan sermons. The canon, these old folks are sometimes disparaged as the dead white males, where all these dead white males were preaching to me. So that made a huge difference. And again, not through any of my desire or effort. I didn't volunteer for the course. I was assigned to it. But just reading those things eventually had a big impact on me until the point where in 1976 I finally had nothing to do except to agree that, yes, Jesus Christ is Lord, and to be baptized and join a church.
That's a pretty big jump from card-carrying communist to card-carrying Christian.
Right.
One of the things, though, that I find intriguing about your story is that you didn't sacrifice your intellect. I mean, you're a PhD, you're well-studied. It was the pursuit of intellectual truth that led you to Christian faith. Some people think that if you become a Christian, you've kind of got to give up your brain and become less intelligent. That has not been your pilgrimage, certainly.
Not at all. And in fact, if you start pursuing things logically and you start thinking, well, how could this universe exist? How could there be life here? How could there be intelligent life? I think you come to a position of intelligent design. That's what a lot of scientists are doing. They're very much disparaged by others in the academy, but that's a growing understanding, and it's the thing that really makes sense.
When the phrase compassionate conservatism became a major part of the Bush campaign and even the White House, a lot of people don't know it was your book that influenced that concept. Doug Weed, I think, may have given it its title, but the concept of that was yours from something you had written, and then you were an advisor to George Bush when you lived in Austin, Texas. What happened to compassionate conservatism? Because a lot of people disparage it later as saying, well, it didn't work, it was only big government.
Well, it did not fail. It was never tried. The concept of compassionate conservatism was that people in their neighborhoods know best what those neighborhoods need. If they're poor people, they can see the problems in the neighborhood. They're going to know it a lot better than a person sitting in Washington, no matter how bright he may think he is. So in World, for example, in World Magazine right now, we've been covering a woman in Wisconsin who saw problems with disabled kids and parents dealing with those disabled kids and sometimes coming to the end of their rope, and she set up a group to help them. She was able to do that much more successfully than sending all that information to Washington and having someone come back with an idea.
What a novel idea. You're basically saying that it ought to be handled at the neighborhood, the family, the community, even the state level before it goes all the way to the federal level and then pushed back down in terms of policy.
Yeah, it just makes sense. I mean, one thing, people in this audience and folks watching this, if you had $500 that you could decide how it would be spent to fight poverty in some way, rather than sending it to Washington, would you know of a group in your own community, in your own neighborhood, that could fight it, use the money more effectively than people in Washington could? People all over the country know that. So why do we keep sending the money to Washington, hope a little bit of it will trickle back in? A $500 tax credit that individuals could send $500 less to Washington, send that $500 directly to the charity of the choice in the community, whether it's religious or secular or whatever. Their choice, they would do a better job with that money than the people in Washington.
Essentially, compassionate conservatism is not a government program. It's government getting out of the way so people can be charitable with their own resources, empowering people to do what they got to do. Marvin, I hope we can have you back, because fascinating discussion that we need to continue, as well as about 10,000 other things that I always love talking to you about. If people are not also regular readers of World Magazine, he's the editor-in-chief, I highly recommend this one. It's a must-read for me. I don't ever miss it, and I would encourage you to as well.
And can I just mention, I was identified as the president of King's College. It's a great, illustrious position. I'm actually the provost.
The provost.
So, but we have a great college in the Empire State Building where we teach kids how to fight poverty effectively, a way that really works, not just talk about it, but actually go out and do it.
And I've been to King's College and spoken to some of the brightest students from all over the world who come to study. It is a fascinating place. Marvin, thank you very much. A pleasure to have you with us today. Coming up, the Little Rockers with a Dolly Parton anthem for hard-working folks everywhere. We'll be right back.